Tech by Tips.
Hello and welcome to another Tech by Tips video. If you've seen my channel lately, you've seen that I have a video about how to boot Raspberry Pis from the network using a Pixie server. And now I'm gonna continue building up on that, right? On this video, we're gonna talk about how you can create a Kubernetes cluster with those Raspberry Pis that are booting from the network. It's kind of tricky to get Kubernetes set up on Raspberry Pis that are booting from the network because there's some details that are not provided in the documentation from Kubernetes. So what I'm going to do in this video is do a proper installation of Kubernetes in Raspberry Pi 4B that is booting from the network. I'm going to show you the problems and how to fix it. And in the end, you should have a light Kubernetes cluster running on net booted Raspberry Pis. And it can be as big as you want or as small as just having a master node in that cluster. Hope you like it. See you next time. Thank you for the new people that followed the channel, that subscribed to the channel. And let me know if you like the videos and if there's anything that you would like for me to cover. And I'll do my best to make more videos that you will find useful. Thank you. Let's get to it. Okay, so here we have a Raspberry Pi that is booted from the network and it doesn't have anything installed right now. And we want to be able to install Kubernetes into it so that we can run Kubernetes pods, etc. So there are some problems with the information that we get from the Kubernetes website, that there are some instructions that are missing for cases like this where you're booting the Raspberry Pi from the network. But what we want is we want to be able to replicate this, be able to install light Kubernetes and creating a cluster. And if you have more than Raspberry Pi, then you can put more than one node, a master and other workers. So that's what we are planning to do on this Raspberry Pi that currently has nothing. So but first, let's do a little bit of housekeeping here. There are a few things that we need to do. So let's go into the Etsy host. There we go. And we need to fix a few things here. We need to make sure that we are pointing to our IP address. And here it's our host name is in here. So we're going to name this Raspberry Pi our Kubernetes master. But I already have a master here. So I'm going to call this one K3S master 2. So that there's no conflicts in the network, making sure that the local IP points to that and that the assigned IP also points to that. That's something where you want to be able to cover. And if we're going to put any worker nodes, we can do it like that too also, for example. And that should help us with the Raspberry Pis being able to communicate with each other in the Kubernetes cluster. So X out of there, save, and that's good. Then, so we have our Etsy host ready. So another thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that our operating system is up to date. So let's do an sudo apt get update and a sudo apt get upgrade to make sure we have the latest version of all the packages for the operating system, making sure we're at the latest version possible. Just like that, our system is up to date and ready. But there are some issues that we have to deal with that we were going to see when we try to run the installation with the instructions that we get from the website. If we go into the website that has the instructions, we have this pretty simple script that says run curl, grabbing the script and basically just executing it and running. But if we try to run this, we will find some problems. There we go. So now it seems like it's trying to download and install Kubernetes, but here we go, we got the first problem. If we see here, it says failed to find memory C group. You may need to add C group memory 1, C group enable memory to your Linux command line. That's the command line text file inside our boot partition of our SD card, but in this case, since we're booting from the network, it's actually on our network. And that's something that we need to do first. So we see it fails. It didn't work. So let's make sure that nothing is installed here. All right. And then what we need to do is we need to go into the folder that contains that Raspberry Pi's boot partition. We go into the command line and we need to add a few entries in here. So what we do is we put cgroup underscore enable equals CPU set. We put cgroup underscore enable equals memory and cgroup underscore memory equals 1, and we save this. That's the first change that we have to make. And then for this to work, we need to reboot the Raspberry Pi, so let's do that. Okay, now that our Raspberry Pi has rebooted, then we can go ahead and try that again. So we copy this, paste it, and see what happens. Okay, so it looks like now we don't get that error that was saying that we needed to add something to the command line text. So that is good, there's some progress, but however, we're still having some issues with this. We'll see in a bit. Let's wait for it to complete the process. And it looks like it was successful this time. We don't see another error on that point, but nope. Let's wait here, hold our horses, because we do have an error. If we look carefully, it says the job for K3S service failed because the control process exited with an error code. And it says that if we want to see what happened, we can check with the system control status or with the journal control. So let's do that. Let's do sudo system control status K3S service, and that should give us a little bit more information. If we look here, it says that it tried to load, but then here's an important message. Write to database call failed. And here it says create accept application Kubernetes. Okay, it was trying to create something, right? And it failed because it couldn't write to the database. The request did not complete within the requested timeout, and it says it took too long. Now, can we get more information here? Let's see. Tunnel servers egress proxy waiting for runtime. Okay. Certificates. Okay. And here is the important point. Here we go. Waiting for to retrieve agent configuration. The server is not ready. OverlayFS snapshotter cannot be enabled for containerd. And then it says try to use either Fuse OverlayFS or native. It failed to mount the overlay. So this is telling us that because our file system resides on the network, the OverlayFS that it's trying to use to read and write to the files, it's just not working. So we need to try to use another snapshotter for this. And if we can also check here on the other place that was suggested, I think it was journal control. So let's do that. Journal ctlxe. We also get more details, right? And it tells us things that fail, right? OverlayFS, OverlayFS does not support temp file. OverlayFS does not support rename. OverlayFS, so it looks like everything is with the OverlayFS. So that means we need to fix this problem now by using another snapshotter. Okay, so let's make that change. Let's make sure that we are able to write to the file system properly. But first, I want to make sure that I clean up everything just to be safe. Make sure that nothing is there for later. So let's run the uninstaller script just to be safe. Okay, now I have restarted the Raspberry Pi again, make sure everything's clean, and we're ready to go. And we're going to run the script, but we're going to have some extra flags that we're going to provide. For example, the --write -kubeconfig -mode. The documents recommend 644, but I've noticed that if I just give it 777, it works better. So you can choose 644 or 777, however you want. And then we're going to specify the name for this master node, which is going to be --node-name K3S master2, because I already have a master in my network. And we're going to put the flag --snapshotter equals native, so that we're able to work with the file system properly and we don't get that problem with the OverlayFS. Now we just execute this and wait. Okay, so now it's installing and everything seems to be working fine. We might see a message here at the very end when it's starting the Kubernetes service that it fails for some reason. If that does happen, then I'm gonna go into details so you can see what's going on. But basically, what I've noticed is for this Raspberry Pi, sometimes since we're working through the network, right, and our file system is on the network, but Kubernetes usually tries to use a SQLite database to hold this information. It is kind of slow when it sends updates to the database through the network, and if it tries to do it very fast, then it's gonna get a message where you're not allowed to touch the database right now because we're working on it, right? So it says the database is locked or that SQL is responding slowly, and that's why we might get that error at the end. But we just have to be patient. We just have to let it do its thing, and eventually all the things that need to be written to the database are going to be written, and then the system is going to successfully load the Kubernetes service, and then it'll be running. As you can see, we did get that error, so let's make this bigger and go into the details so that we can see what I was talking about. Let me go here to the system control, and if you see here, you know, it's waiting for things to be set up. Service not ready. So first try to set some things, and eventually it'll get through. And if we go again, it changes the messages a little bit. So now we're waiting for the tunnel server egress proxy and waiting for the API. So as we can see, it is actually working on things, but there's a reason why this is happening. Eventually later we'll see an error that mentions the database. So okay, right now it's going through the etcd endpoints. Let's try again to see what's going on. All right. Okay, now it's something about JSON responses. And what else comes now? Okay, still working on that part. We're still getting that 500 error. Okay, now we're moving forward. Okay, so now the caches are synced. They're running the API priority, so it's looking better now. So let's see where we're now. Waiting to retrieve kube proxy configuration. Okay, still no response from the server. Still trying to connect. Okay. This can take a while, so you have to be patient. Let it do its thing. It's mainly because we're using SQLite, and that kind of causes problems. But that's what I've noticed, so that's why I'm going through this exercise of showing what's going on, so you don't panic. You know what you have to do. You just have to be patient and wait for it to do its thing. Okay, we're gonna give it some time. I'm gonna pause it for a little bit, give it some time, come back after I see more progress. Okay, took like 30 seconds, and now we're seeing the errors that I was mentioning. We see slow SQL. That's okay. It's doing things to the database, but like I said, it's SQLite over the network, so that it's slow, that locks the database. It has to wait for it to finish before it tries to do something else, and eventually it'll get there. So we keep monitoring it. Things keep progressing. So just be more, be patient. I'll be back in a bit. I'm gonna keep monitoring it until we see more progress. Okay, we're seeing more progress. Now we see caches are being synced again, and other database tables are up to date. Kind is available, so things are moving slowly forward, and we just have to keep on giving it time and being patient. Here again, we're seeing database is locked, so everything is because it's slowly configuring itself, but it's just taking some time. Alright, and it looks like we're moving forward now. As you can see, some things were skipped, and now we're at the point where it's finally creating cluster IPs and things that are necessary for Kubernetes to run. So we're about there. You just need to give it a little bit more time. Okay, I let the Raspberry Pi do its thing for a while. I was pretty late last night, so I just went to sleep, and I'm back, and it looks like everything is running now. We can see that the Kubernetes service is up and running, so we can also validate here doing a kubectl get nodes. And there we go, we got the Kubernetes master 2 ready, and everything looks good. Let me see if we have kubectl get all. What else do we have here? Okay, the cluster IP. Cool. So now our Kubernetes service is working, but there are a few things that we can do. So now we have our Kubernetes cluster running, and if we want to add a worker node to the Kubernetes cluster, we can then come into here, and with this command we can get the server token, which is a file that is in the Raspberry Pi once we've installed Kubernetes, and we can use this token to connect a worker to the cluster, and we can do it with this command here. 1 second. Here we go. So we put basically curl and then -sfl, and then we get the install script from Kubernetes, but then we pipe it to the URL of our master. In this case, if we've set up the Etsy hosts, we just put the name of the master node. If not, then you can put the IP here. and then you have to put that token that we retrieved from the master, which is this one in here in the K3S underscore token parameter, and then the name that we want to give to that worker node, which is K3S underscore node underscore name, and then we just make sure that we install using the native snapshotter, and that'll get us a worker node added to our cluster. I'm not going to do that because this is only going to be a one Raspberry Pi cluster. And once we do that, then we can go ahead and actually deploy the Kubernetes dashboard. I really like this. I like to be able to view things in a better way. So, oh my god, that copied it kind of weird. But yeah, the first thing is we specified the GitHub URL for that Kubernetes dashboard repository, and then we specify we find out the latest version with this other command, and then we do the actual pull of the YAML file that'll trigger that creation. And then we have the command here that will actually create that deployment that'll give us the Kubernetes dashboard. So when we execute this, it creates the Kubernetes dashboard namespace, service secrets, and everything. So now it should create the Kubernetes dashboard. Let me go back to make this more readable. Okay, so here's the command. The first line, GitHub underscore URL, and then the URL for the Kubernetes dashboard. Then after that is to pull out the latest version number. So it's a command that does some finding using sed for that latest version, and then stores that into a variable. And then we have that command that does the Kubernetes create passing the deployment YAML file, and that creates the dashboard. So now if we look, pods, and what's the namespace? The namespace is Kubernetes dashboard. So now we have that pod that is running with the Kubernetes dashboard metrics scraper, and the other one is still in the process. It can take a little bit of time for it to be ready, so it's just a matter of being patient. Remember that we're running from the network, so sometimes things get a little slow because of that SQLite file. Let's keep on monitoring it. Yeah, we'll have to give it time, so let's wait for a little bit and come back when that's done. And alright, it took like 30 seconds, and now the Kubernetes dashboard pod is actually running, so that's good. Now we need to do some other things, so we're going to create some YAML files. So let's do a nano dashboard admin user .yml, and then we're going to paste this, which is to create an admin user for the dashboard. So API version 1, kind is a service account, and the metadata says admin user for the Kubernetes dashboard namespace. We save this, and we also do this other one, which is the nano dashboard admin user YAML. Admin user, user role, sorry, YAML. And then in here we're going to paste this, which is for the RBAC authorization. It's a cluster role binding for the admin user, and has a reference to the role and subjects. So we save this, and now we should be able to deploy that. So we can run this command here, which is kubectl create with a flag for those two files. Now it creates the service account and the cluster role binding, so that is good. Now we have to wait until we see that it settles, so we can validate that by watching the kube control to see for the endpoints. So we're going to monitor this. Okay, it looks like we have an IP already, so that looks good. And now if we want to see the dashboard, we need to get a token first, because that's how we're going to log into the dashboard. So we use this command, sudo kubernetes kubectl namespace kubernetes dashboard create token admin user, and that'll give us a token that we will use to log in to the Kubernetes dashboard. But first, let's check the status of the service. So we use kubectl namespace kubernetes dashboard get service, and we don't have external IP, so we cannot access this from outside the Raspberry Pi at the moment, so we have to wait for that. Or actually, what we can do is that we can switch this from cluster IP into something else, like a service with a load balancer. So we can go ahead and do that. If we go with this command here, there, so Kubernetes dashboard, and we edit the service Kubernetes dashboard, it'll bring us here into a Vim editor that has that file, and we just have to come here where it says type cluster IP, and we press I to edit, and then we change this into load balancer. Oh, I see, I'm missing something here. Should be after this, we need to have external IPs, and now we can specify the IP address, but then this goes in here. Okay, external IPs, perfect. Now let's do the right quit, and now it actually took it. My bad, I missed that part. So now the service should have updated, and we can validate that by doing the kubectl get service. And now we actually have an external IP for that Kubernetes dashboard. So we should be able to, using this token, go into that URL and log into that dashboard. So let's go and do that. Alright, so here we go, and we're gonna go 10.0.0.90, and then we alright, I actually cleared the URL and left it at just the IP, and then it worked. So then I didn't have to put the whole URL. So now what we do is we grab that token again to be able to log in to the dashboard. And now we go here, we select token, we paste the token here, and we press sign in. And now we have access to our Kubernetes dashboard for our Raspberry Pi 4 cluster. So now here we can navigate and see details. Right now there's nothing going on really, so that we only have the Kubernetes service here. With clusters and stuff, it's not a lot of information, but this is a good thing to have if you have a more complex environment with several things running and stuff. So it's good to have the Kubernetes dashboard. So now you know how to install the Kubernetes dashboard and how to install the cluster on Raspberry Pis that are booting from the network. Now if you want to clear up your Raspberry Pi, you no longer need that. Well, you can do several things. For starters, if you did create a worker node, you delete that using the you go into the node and you run this script here, the user local bin Kubernetes agent uninstall script, and that'll clear everything that you installed, and the Raspberry Pi will be back to how it was before you installed it. And in the master node, you would do basically the same thing, but you would select the user local bin Kubernetes -uninstall script, and that'll remove everything. So let's say, for example, here, if we run it, it'll just get rid of every single thing that we did. So the thing to know, right, when you're working on a Kubernetes cluster with Raspberry Pis that are booting from the network, you need to be patient. You need to give it time to perform its actions, because we have the issue with the SQLite file being on the network, and it takes time to write, so that locks the database file for a bit. So as long as you give it time, it'll work, and that's mainly for the setup. Once you have it set up, then it starts working pretty fast after that. And that's it. That's how you install Kubernetes in a Raspberry Pi 4 that is booting from the network, how you install the dashboard, the Kubernetes dashboard, and how do you remove it also. So I hope you like this. I hope you find it useful. See you on the next one.